just reading. Okay. Hello, everybody. Before we start the meeting, I'd like to have a minute's silence in tribute for a former councillor, Elizabeth Young, who died recently. So if we could just have a minute's silence for a minute. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, councillors, members of the public and press. Welcome to this meeting of the council. This meeting is being live streamed on the website and recorded. I will now hand over to the council's managing director.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I will now run through some of the working practices and etiquette for remote virtual meetings. Firstly, I would like to remind members of the virtual meeting protocol, which has been circulated to all members previously. Members are reminded to remain on mute until requested through the chair or myself to speak, which will eliminate background noises and any unintentional disturbances. When called to speak, please remember to unmute yourselves, and members are reminded of council procedure rules in respect of speaking once during the debate and the length of speeches. We will begin the meeting by way of roll call for all those in attendance remotely, and may I request members to confirm they have a paper copy of the agenda and can both hear and see councillors in the meeting. I will now hand over to the Democratic Services team to begin the roll call.
Thank you. Could I begin with Councillor Christopher Akers-Belcher?
Yes, present. I have the papers and I can both hear and see members.
Thank you. Councillor Stephen Akers-Belcher?
Yes, I am present and I have all the paperwork.
Thank you. Councillor Brewer?
Hello, Merry Christmas, and yes to all the above.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
Yes, I'm here and everything's present and correct.
Thank you. Councillor Buchan?
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councillor Cartwright?
Yes, I can hear and see everyone and I've got the paperwork. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy?
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councillor Fleming?
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councillor Hall?
Yes, I've got the papers. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton?
Yes, I've got everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison?
Yes, everything present and correct. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Howson?
I have all the paperwork and I can see and hear.
Thank you. Councillor Hunter?
Yeah, I have all the paperwork and can see and hear.
Thank you. Councillor James?
Yes, I am here. I can see and hear all the members and I believe I have the paperwork.
Thank you. Councillor King?
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councillor Lauderdale?
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councillor Lindridge?
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councillor Little?
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councillor Loynes?
Yes to all.
Councillor Marshall?
Yes to all.
Councillor Moore?
Yes to all.
Councillor Prince?
Yes to everything, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tony Richardson?
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councillor Carl Richardson?
Yes, I've got everything, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith?
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councillor Stokel?
Yes to all, thank you.
Councillor Tennant?
Yes, I have everything, thank you.
Councillor Thomas?
Yes to everything.
Councillor Ward?
Yes to everything.
Thank you. And Councillor Young?
Yes to all.
Thank you. That concludes the roll call. Thank you.
Councillor Loynes, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. that better? Yeah. I've had no apologies for absence, and we've got a full crew. So thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance tonight. We're moving on to agenda 2, which is declarations of interest. Members with any interest have been asked to declare in advance of the meeting, and have any members got any interest to declare at this meeting? I see no hands up, so I presume you haven't. Is that okay? Thank you. Right, we'll move on to the next item, which is 3. To deal with any business required by statute to be done by any other business. We have none. Item 4, approve the minutes of the last meeting of council held on the 20th of October as a correct record. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify before I approve the minutes. Item 66 stands uncompleted. So at what point in the agenda will you take that item?
66. Okay,
Chair,
I'll pass that up to the Managing Director. Denise, please.
It's in my business report, Marjorie. We'll pick it up then.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Everybody in agreement with them? The minutes? Yep, I see no more hands up, so I presume everybody's okay with them. Right, so are there any questions under agenda item 5, please? Apart from Marjorie. No, don't see any hands up, so that's great, thank you. There are no items under agenda numbers 6, 7 and 8. But item 9 is the report of the Licensing Committee to be presented by the Chair of that committee, Councillor Buchan. Councillor Buchan, would you like to come and give the report, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Licensing Act 2003 requires local authorities to publish a licensing policy every 5 years. As Hartlepool's last policy was published in 2016, a new one is required now. As Chairman of the Licensing Committee, I'm conscious of the significant detrimental impact that COVID-19 has had on our licence trade, and I'm sure all members will agree when I say our thoughts are with them during these unprecedented times. The proposed licensing policy, which is being considered and agreed by the Licensing Committee, is similar to those of previous years, with the exception that it no longer contains a cumulative impact policy, nor as a special policy. Special policies were designed to stop the uncontrolled spread of licensed premises across already saturated nighttime economy areas in nighttime economies. I've struggled over recent years. The government has changed the rules, and there is now no longer the evident base required for retaining one. The Council does, however, retain its powers to consider every new application when it is made to refuse or revoke a licence when it is considered necessary. The removal of the special policy will not have an impact on the Council's ability to manage its nighttime economy. I therefore recommend the adoption of this draft licensing policy to Council, which I will now read out. Excuse me, please. Introduction. The policy statement is based on the provisions of the Licensing Act 2003 and has taken full account of the guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003 by the Secretary of State for the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, TCMS. This policy will apply for a period of 5 years from the 1st of January 2021. It will be kept under review and revised, amended if considered appropriate to support the licensing objectives. Any policy changes or revisions will be subject to consultation. The Borough of Hartlepool. Hartlepool Borough Council, acting as the licensing authority for the Licensing Act, recognises the benefits to Hartlepool of a thriving service economy and wishes to promote, wherever possible, a town that meets and exceeds the requirements of its residents and visitors. However, the licensing authority recognises that certain types of licensed premises, particularly those offering alcohol and/or music, may have a detrimental impact on those who live nearby through the escape of noise or the actions of patrons both on and off the premises. The licensing authority intends to seek a balance between the needs of residents and local businesses by using this licensing policy and other strategies to promote and encourage well-managed neighbourhood friendly licensed premises that represent a positive addition to life in Hartlepool. The legal background of this policy is Hartlepool Borough Council, acting as the licensing authority, is able to grant or reject applications for the sale of alcohol, the provision of regulated entertainment or late night refreshment, conditions designed to ensure safety, protect children from harm, prevent crime, disorder and public nuisance will be attached to licenses where appropriate. However, the ability of licensing authorities to grant licenses and attach conditions is limited by provisions in the Act. Regulations may be made under the Act and by guidance from the Secretary of State. The licensing authority must have regard to the guidance and will deviate only where there are justifiable reasons for doing so. In formulating this policy document, the licensing authority has had to regard the provisions of the European Convention on Human Rights, recognising that everyone has the right to respect for his, her home and private life, that every person is entitled to the peaceful enjoyment of his or her possessions.
Madam Chair, do you mind if I interject? Sorry, Councillor Buchan.
Yeah.
I was just, I think, just to help with the management of the meeting, I don't think there's a need to read the full report, Councillor Buchan. I think you can just ask everyone if they've got any comments.
They've actually read it.
Everything.
Yes.
Yeah, they have read it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Has everyone actually read the report? Because I will be here half the night if I read it all out.
Yes, I have. So everybody else.
Well, I'd recommend that it's accepted. Somebody second me on that.
Okay.
I'd second that.
We need to go into a debate first, if that's okay. Councillor Buchan.
Yes, fine.
We'll begin the debate. Has anybody got anything to say? I don't see any hands up. No? There's a few shaking their heads. No. Okay. Any questions then? Is that your finger up, Councillor Cartwright? Are you wanting to say something? Oh, Councillor Young. I've got you. Councillor Young, would you like to comment?
I was going to propose it, Madam Mayor.
Oh, right, okay, that's fine. No questions then? No? Seconder?
I'll second.
Okay, so we'll go into a recorded vote then. Yeah. Instead of having the recorded vote, is there any dissent? I don't see any hands up. So I'll take that as accepted then. That's brilliant. Thank you very much, members. Okay. Sorry about this. My fingers slipped. Yeah, there are no reports under item 10. So moving on to item 11 is the report of the Finance and Policy Committee presented by the Chair of the Committee, Councillor Moore. Councillor Moore, would you like to take over?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Presenting the Community Safety Plan for 2020-21. The Crime and Disorder Act of 1988 created a legal obligation for this council to work in partnership with other agencies such as the police, fire brigade and probation service to work together to address crime and disorder, substance misuse and reoffending. The Safer Hartlepool Partnership fulfills this obligation and periodically publishes a community safety plan detailing the objectives and priorities of the partnership and how how performance will be managed and monitored. The development of the Community Safety Plan 2020-21, which is presented to you today, is delayed due to COVID, but is nonetheless required to fulfil our legal obligations to have a plan in place. Work is already underway on the development of the next plan, which is expected to take effect in April 21. The 2020-21 plan has identified 3 key priority areas for the partnership: drugs and alcohol, antisocial behaviour and domestic violence. I'm sure the Council will agree that these 3 issues are all areas of significant concern for the residents of Hartlepool, and that it's right that the Council works closely with the police and other focused resource areas, and focuses resources to address them. I'm pleased to say the responses received following the public consultation on the proposed plan were strongly supportive, and I recommend the proposed Community Safety Plan for 2020-21 to Council for adoption. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Samoa. Are there any questions, or do you want to go into debate first? Anybody want to say anything? Start it off. Oh, Councillor Harrison.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. It was just a point there, Councillor Moore, about one of the areas that you're going to be looking at, that the partnership is going to be looking at, and that was antisocial behaviour, which I'm sure you're aware the Audit and Governance Committee have done a big piece of work on over last year. So it would be good to just join that up rather than start again from scratch, and use that information, I think, for whatever you're doing in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
If
thank
I
you,
can come
Councillor
back,
Harrison.
if
Yes,
I can come
Councillor
back,
Moore,
Madam
you'd
Mayor.
like to come back? Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Yeah, that's a great point, and there was an exceptional piece of work done by the Audit and Governance Committee. We can feed that in, and similarly, the outcome and the performance measurements for the community safety plan will be fed back through to Audit and Governance as well.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Cartwright, you want to come in?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's just fair to point out again, probably on the point of antisocial behaviour, that I am currently speaking with the Police and Crime Commission on the Police and Crime Commission's panel, and probably challenging Chief Lewis on the crossover between antisocial behaviour and crime. When it stops becoming antisocial behaviour and starts becoming crime, and you'll see in these minutes attached in the Police and Crime Commissioner's comments that I have asked the question if the model we're going to use and the Chief Lewis wants to roll out is the model that Hartlepool currently have, by co-locating our team with the police team in the police station, that really should run a little bit more fluid. So yes, I totally agree that the Safer Hartlepool have done a fantastic job. Please keep up the work, but that little piece needs to be running a little bit more fluid. And as I say, I am challenging that, I suppose, in a different way through the PCC. But I really should really highlight the fact that the action days are absolutely brilliant. So thank you very much for all you're doing with the action days. That's it from me.
Thank you, Councillor Cartwright, and I do agree the action days are excellent, really good. Councillor Tennant, I believe you want to come in.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, it's largely a reiteration of what Lee's just said there. The action days have been absolutely brilliant. It demonstrates that the authority is trying to take positive action, as well as highlighting the options that residents can take. I'd love to see that go forward and be taken as part of Safer Hartlepool Partnership for many years to come. As regards the PCC, I did sit in the Police and Crime panel for Councillor Cartwright when we interviewed the stand-in for Police and Crime Commissioner in reaction to Barry Coppich's resignation, and I did press Lisa to really put Hartlepool, give Hartlepool a lot more consideration in terms of police on the beat and the custody suite being reopened. And she did actually make strong arguments towards that end. And of course, I've got confidence in Richard Lewis and in his efforts as to get confidence back in Cleveland Police. Of course, that's going to take time. There's no doubt about that. But of course, we also have to take into account the fact that there will be an election for Police and Crime Commissioner. So Lisa's job will be limited time-wise. So we just have to be patient. But I'm very, very pleased with the work of the Safer Hartlepool Partnership, and long may that work continue. So I just want to pass on my thanks to everybody for that.
Thank you, Councillor Tennant. Would anybody else like? I've got nobody's hands up, so I presume nobody wants to ask any questions or comment or anything. No, and I agree totally. It's an excellent report, and long may this continue. It's brilliant.
Brenda, you're muted.
Oh, gosh. Sorry, I can't feel my finger end, so right, sorry about this. Right, okay, so nobody else is wanting to speak or anything. and no questions, right? It is an excellent report, I agree, and long may it continue, the good work that everybody's doing. So is there any dissent before we go on to a vote? No, I see a lot of heads shaking, so I'll take that as accepted. Yeah, okay, we accept the report. Okay, the two motions have been received under item 12, which is, I'll read it out, and it's, this council notes the significant and costly disruption being experienced by staff and students as a result of COVID infections and restrictions. Despite the very best efforts of schools, staff, students and the local authority, this is having a detrimental impact on the well-being and education of young people in our town. Therefore, Council resolves to set up a working party of the Children's Services Committee to engage with schools and explore a range of possible options to support schools in their continued delivery of excellent education for all our young people. Okay. Councillor Harrison.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you. The motion is actually there to add an extra layer of support for an already very good service that's been offered to schools. I think the local authority have worked very well. I think the schools have worked in an excellent way throughout this time over the last 9 months. But they are facing even greater challenges as time goes on. And I think, you know, I really just felt, and the Labour group felt, that it would be a really good thing to have this extra layer of support. The latest fiasco, for example, is the implementation of the rapid testing in secondary schools after Christmas. Schools only found out about this week, and as you may have heard on the news, it has been slightly held back because of the school's response to it, and also the union's response to it. It has huge ramifications for schools testing pupils on a daily basis, and it has huge ramifications for the local authority to help implement this. So it's just one challenge after another for our schools and the staff and the children in those schools. The committee ideally sits within the committee that ideally sits within that sort of remit is the Children's Services Committee, but I would think that it wasn't quite always necessary for it to be a Children's Services Committee member who, if anyone else wanted to be on that working party. So I hope that you will support this motion in order to support our schools in the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. I've got Councillor Lisa Smith. Councillor Smith, would you like to take over?
Yeah, I've just got a little statement that I would like to read out, if that's okay. From September, all schools in Hartlepool reopened and welcomed all pupils back, despite facing unprecedented challenges associated with COVID-19. They remained open to support and care and educate all of our children and young people. All Hartlepool schools are working very hard in extreme difficult circumstances and in difficult challenges than before. And we must recognise and thank all of the leaders and all those working in schools going above and beyond and even further. Alongside their usual responsibilities, they have had added challenges of receiving information when staff and pupils are tested positive for COVID-19 and determine isolation arrangements for their bubbles. This has seen many children and young people needing to self-isolate during the course of the term. Nevertheless, schools have responded to the challenge within the welfare and protection of their pupil and workforce as the primary consideration. Rigorous health and safety assessments are in place in all schools and have been monitored by health and safety teams to ensure schools are safe as possible. As we all know, the national picture changes daily, and Councillor Harrison has just picked up on this. Most recently, we've been made aware of rolling out the regular testing for secondary schools and colleague workforces. This means that staff and students can continue to attend school and college as normal, rather than having to self-isolate as before. The evidence shows that transmission rates of the virus is low in schools, and most pupils or staff who test positive are contracting the virus outside of the school environment. Children and young people have responded extremely well to being back at school and dealing extremely well to circumstances they find themselves into and remain positive throughout. Since the pandemic began, all of the schools in Hartlepool have worked collaboratively with the staff in children's services to achieve a joined up, consistent approach across the town. Joint decisions have been made between our schools and the local authority, which has not been seen or evident in other areas, and it's a real strength to Hartlepool. Our schools in Hartlepool do actually want to stay open to educate and care for their pupils. They recognise the impact of closure of schools in March 2020 on many pupils and working hard to support the pupils to catch up on lost learning time. The government have issued guidelines. It's called the Contingency Framework of Education and Childcare Settings. This framework sets out as government priority that education and childcare settings should continue to operate as normal as possible during COVID-19, no matter what tier we are in. It outlines the prioritisation of which pupils and their framework is very explicit, stating that an educational setting should not move to implement any restrictive measures of any kind set out in the contingency framework without the explicit agreement of the Department of Education. This statement makes it very clear that there is no local determination allowed to apply to this guidance. So no matter what decision or idea we would come through with the working group, it will not, I'll just 2 seconds down and I'm nearly finished.
Okay, 2 seconds
Yeah,
then.
I'm having a heart attack at the same time. I do apologise.
For sake.
With this in mind, so we can't make any decisions outside of the guidelines of the government. So as Chair of Children's Services, I decided to ask our school representatives on the committee to see whether they would find the convening of a working group would be of interest. One indicated they would be very happy to engage. 3 of them expressed their views that they were not sure that a working group would be beneficiary. He noted that the head teachers cluster lead with the directors and the assistant directors have been excellent level of support for all schools throughout the pandemic. One of the head teachers commented that a working group would already exists and there is no real point of an addition. With that feedback we've received, I'm confident that leaders within the schools and the local authority are working extremely well together to do the best balance of the safety of the education of our children. For that reason, I am totally against the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I've got Councillor Carl Richardson next. Carl, would you like to come in?
Yes, first of all, I'd like to second this motion. I think I wouldn't have thought it would have been all that controversial, in actual fact. This would complement what the council is doing, and I don't think there'll be any problem. I think it's quite apt. The problem we've got is that the government keeps changing the goalposts, and we need to have to be constantly looking at that, and there needs to be an input of councillors, not just including the children's services people, but across the board, so we know what we're doing and there'll be a feedback. But there needs to be a feedback into the children's services. But I would like to make a small addendum that I think that Brenda Harrison should chair this working party, as she is an ex-teacher. She was an ex-chair of children's services. And I think she would be an appropriate person to chair this working party. And I do hope that the committee supports this motion, which, in my opinion, they really should. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Councillor King, I've got the hand up, or have you taken it down?
Thank you, Chair. I've taken an interest in this motion because I have a master's degree in primary education and I have nearly 15 years teaching experience. And I'm going to pose this motion for 2 reasons. I think, first of all, if you want to help the kids in Hartlepool schools, then I would encourage them to turn off the TV because if you look at mainstream media, they are totally ramping up the fear factor for COVID, for a virus which has a low number of cases and a low death rate. So I think you need to stop exposing kids to all this scaremongering. The second issue I have is that I think if you're going to help these kids, then we need to oppose the tier system that the government has
Can I raise a point of order?
Okay.
Go ahead,
Chair,
Councillor
I'd
King.
like to raise a point of order. I
Go on
think
then,
it's
Councillor.
I think it's irresponsible. The views expressed. We've already seen views from national parties, and I don't think Councillor King's comments are helpful in fighting the virus. And as somebody, you know, there are people out there who have lost loved ones, and I think it's absolutely insensitive and bang out of order to describe it as scaremongering. So therefore, I would suggest that we don't hear any more of this baseless comment, because it's actually detrimental to the public health of Hartlepool. And I feel, as a member, she is breaching the code of conduct, and she is actually misleading members of the public. So I would ask that this irresponsible, reckless behaviour stops now.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Casbelshaw. Councillor King, I'm going to have to stop you there because you are going against the code of conduct, and I'm sorry. Okay, so we'll move on to Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to add really to, I mean, I don't particularly have a strong view as to whether we should or we shouldn't have a working group. So I'm on the fence between whether we should or not. But I think that if the chair of Children's Services is asking us to not go along this route, then I think we have to take that seriously as a request. But the point that I want to try and make is that there are huge weaknesses in government advice around education, and education at all age groups. I mean, I was quite surprised the other day in Audit and Governance that what's been done in universities so that students can return home for their Christmas break is that they've been tested before they've left their university campus to travel home. And if they don't get a negative result, then they obviously would remain where they are until such time as they do. Now, my understanding from what was discussed in Audit and Governance the other day is that there is no reverse arrangement on that, because the question I asked to Public Health for Hartlepool was that will they be tested before they return to university in January? And the answer was no, they will be tested when they get back to university. So we are again in January likely to face the same issues that we had in September and October, where students will return to their university campus and they will immediately go into a lockdown situation in their individual rooms or house arrangements. Now, because they brought COVID back to their university. Now, I think that's absolutely ludicrous, but seemingly there is absolutely nothing being done at a government level to rectify this, because I do believe quite strongly that those students should have local testing in their hometown before they do the repeat journey. Because if they are found to be positive, it would be better for them to stay where they are until such time as they can safely travel, because they would just be taking the whole issue onto trains, buses, and eventually into their own campuses. So I think it's just absolutely ludicrous that government is handing out this kind of information, but they're not thinking about the next stage. I mean, from a personal point of view about students in our schools, our pupils, I would have thought that we should be looking at how we can strengthen the delivery of education to them, and things like summer schools, weekend schools should actually be getting discussed, financed and put in place, in my view. And we also need to ensure that the side effect of children being in school, and I do think that they should remain in school for as long as possible, is that they get fed there. We have a huge issue in town about children and families that are absolutely almost destitute and cannot afford to feed their own children. So we really need schools to be the front of delivery in those circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Brewer?
Thank you, Chair. Just primarily in response to Councillor Richardson, how could anyone oppose this motion? Well, we only really have three groups that we can listen to when we're taking advice about COVID. That would be central government, who in this case have decided on the tier system, the World Health Organization, who have come out quite strongly with their special envoy, Dr. David Nabarro, coming out and saying that going into lockdown as the primary means of controlling the virus is the worst mistake that we could make, and up to 7 times more people are now suffering than would have done regardless of the lockdowns. Nevertheless, government instructions are the tier system, and that's what we're abiding by. But virtue signalling by proposing a, I'm going to say, useless motion, one that would have to be re-examined in a short time anyway, it's nothing but virtue signalling and putting children at greater risk than the schools even believe that they would need to be. I mean, as Councillor Smith has come forward and said, only one school in Hartlepool's area is in favour of it. Why should we listen to one school against all of the others? And why should we listen to virtue signalling over the World Health Organization? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Brewer. Councillor Cartwright, I think you're next.
Thank you, Madam. Sorry, mine was probably a question. Sorry, Councillor Lisa Smith. Did I hear somewhere in your statement there that even if we did support this, we couldn't? Word to that effect? Sorry, just I thought I heard it.
No. So the government guidelines are quite specific of how we deal with COVID within schools. So we could have an idea and say, let's try and take this to the schools. If it wasn't within those guidelines, then we couldn't implement it. So if it's in the guidelines, we're doing it anyway. If it's not in the guidelines, we can't put it in.
Thanks for clearing that up,
yeah.
Lisa. I think that pretty much.
Thank you.
Yeah, tells us well.
You said it, Councillor Cartwright. Okay, Councillor Little.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. What we've got to remember, like, the councils wrote to every single school in the town, and there was only one response. And we did write to one of the academies how they would keep one of our children safe through COVID, and we're still waiting for that response. So the schools are not interested as us in interfering. So I think I'm against the motion. Sorry.
Councillor Councillor Leslie Hamilton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think for me, I'm obviously keen to support the motion for a number of reasons, actually, and it's really about looking at how schools have been impacted upon these past several months. I would also suggest that a working group can reflect on how schools have been impacted upon and how it's impacted on the delivery of education. And so I think there are a number of positives attached to that, something that Councillor James said in terms of the delivery of education, particularly should something like this happen again in the future. So it's all about reflection, really. But I think I really need to make a point to Councillor King, and I'm really quite staggered by what she said in regard to scaremongering and the COVID pandemic. I would maybe suggest that she has some discussion with our Director of Public Health, who may be able to offer some enlightenment on the COVID pandemic and the impact it's having just in Hartlepool. And hopefully she will understand, why we should be worried, particularly in areas that is real deprivation, because there's areas of deprivation that are really suffering most from the COVID pandemic. So I wouldn't really call it scaremongering. I would say it's just issuing the facts.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. And from one person who's had coronavirus, early days in March, April. It's no joke, and it's real. It's out there. I didn't believe it myself at first, but when you've had it yourself, you know it's real, and it's not very nice. It does leave you with some problems. Councillor Tennant, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I mean, I think the Chair of Children's Services, Councillor Smith, made quite a robust argument. You know, she's actually evidenced it with some facts, but the point is, the strongest point that she made, in my view, was the fact that government sets the guidelines, and you know, whether we set up a working party or working group, it wouldn't make it one iota of a difference, even if it came up with the best ideas in the world. So I think that, and to create an extra layer of bureaucracy and political decision making, frankly, would not help in the longer term anyway. So I am against the motion. I understand the positive intention behind the motion, but I think the practicalities of it probably just don't really stack up.
And we'll go on to Councillor Moore. Also Shane Moore.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I mean, I do appreciate and support the intent behind the motion Councillor Harrison has brought forward today, and as you'll know, my real passion within this council does lay with children's services. So I don't take any decision on this matter lightly. But it has been stated by the Chair of Children's Services that our schools are already receiving a massive amount of support from the local authority. And I do hear regularly from a number of my friends who are primary school teachers within the town how well Sally and her team have done. And in the words of one, she doesn't think Sally could have done much more. And that kind of comes to the core of this motion, if I'm being honest, Chair. And the role of an elected member is to set the overall policy and make decisions around that policy, and then also scrutinise them afterwards, as Councillor Hamilton referred to there. And if the intention is to reflect on decisions that have been made and see if there's anything that we could be done, then I see no reason why a working party needs to be set up, to be honest. I think that could be arranged through Children's Services Committee. And if the intention of a working party is to get more involved with the day-to-day operational matters, then that's not the role of elected members. So for that matter, for that reason, sorry, I won't be supporting the motion this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. I've got Councillor Harrison and then Councillor Paddy Brown.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just to pick up on what Councillor Brewer said, when Councillor Smith was giving her report, she mentioned the reps that had been asked. It wasn't one school rep out of the whole of Hartlepool, it was 1 out of 4 reps, and she did give the figures. So just to clarify that. And also to clarify a few other things that have been said. This was a motion to support the very good work that was already going on. And at times, however good a piece of work is, however hard people are working, they sometimes still need that extra support. And it was from Children's Services, and Children's Services covers a lot more than education. So it would have been from Children's Services just to give that extra layer of support. I'm quite disappointed actually at some of the reactions in the chamber tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Paddy Brown.
Point of order, Chair. Can I just raise a point of order? Again, sorry. The mover of the debate has just spoken, and therefore, under the Constitution, has now closed, has now spoke again. So that means that debate, unfortunately, now has to come to an end because the mover of the debate has wound up and spoke. So I'm afraid, by that admission, we can't discuss this further, sadly.
Okay.
And I want to indicate as well.
Thank you, Councillor Steve Belcher. Well, what we'll do now is we'll move on to the motion to be moved and a seconder, please. Who's going to move it?
Sorry, yes, me. Yes, thank you.
And the seconder then?
Seconded.
Who's in second?
Councillor Thomas.
All right, okay. Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Okay. We're going to a recorded vote now. Yeah. We're going to a recorded vote, members. I'll pass you over to Them Services.
I think it's me, Chair.
Oh, sorry, MD. It's our Managing Director, Denise.
Very warm in the chamber tonight, so we're very hot. So I'm going to ask for 4 against or abstain. Councillor Christopher Akers-Belcher.
Abstain.
Councillor Stephen Akers-Belcher.
Abstain.
Councillor Brewer. Councillor
mute.
Brewer, are you on mute?
Muted. Against.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Buchan.
Against.
Councillor Cartwright.
Due to the clarity from Lisa, I'm against.
Councillor Cassidy.
Against.
Councillor Fleming.
Against.
Councillor Hall.
Against.
Councillor Hamilton.
For.
Councillor Harrison.
For.
Councillor Howson.
For.
Councillor Hunter.
For.
Councillor James.
Against.
Councillor King.
Against.
Councillor Lauderdale.
Against.
Councillor Lindridge.
For.
Councillor Little.
Against.
Councillor Loynes.
Against.
Councillor Marshall.
Against.
Councillor Moore.
Against.
Councillor Prince.
For, sorry.
Councillor Tony Richardson.
Against.
Councillor Carl Richardson.
For.
Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor Stokel.
Against.
Councillor Tennant.
Against.
Councillor Thomas.
For.
Councillor Ward. You're
Against.
mute. Against. And Councillor Young.
Against.
So that motion isn't carried. Hand back to the chair.
Thank you, members. Okay, the second part of the 12B is the motion is to revert York Road pedestrian and vehicle movement restrictions with immediate effect. Residents have complained directly to us as elected members, informing us that this has placed an extra cost and unwanted wasted time on their day-to-day life. The restriction of cars, vans using York Road diverts the traffic via already busy roads in Hartlepool. The routes also flow past places of worship and schools, and as a result places vulnerable people and children at risk. We acknowledge the email sent reference communication with the local business. However, this is already impacting far more people of the town in a negative way, and we can make a difference to our residents now. I'll pass you on to Councillor Tennant. I believe you have a response, Councillor Tennant.
Chair, for me, with it being my motion, can I interject?
Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I appreciate that. Apologies, Councillor Tennant. With it being my motion, I'd just like to add at the time this was put to in readiness for full council, the restrictions are still in place. As you're aware, the Managing Director has had these lifted. So I need to amend this motion ever so slightly, which would be that to ensure that any other planned projects such as this goes to full consultation with elected members and of course the people of Hartlepool. If we've proven that we can cast that communication net a bit further, as we have done in the past, for example, with the leisure centre. So I'd like to amend the motion ever so slightly, and I would also like to add that all group leaders, and Paddy Brown was group leader of the Labour group at the time have supported this motion. So I'd just like to thank everyone for supporting the motion, as well as the people of Hartlepool simply didn't need these restrictions or want these restrictions in York Road. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Cartwright. Councillor Mike Young.
Chair, I think you were going to open the floor to Councillor Tennant first. Is that right?
Oh yes, sorry. He's gone off the screen. Yes, Councillor Tennant. Sorry about that.
Quite all right, Madam Mayor. I do have a response. As members will be aware, the York Road scheme ended on Monday, following further consultation with businesses halfway through the experimental scheme. The scheme cost £3,000 to implement, and it was funded by the Emergency Active Travel Fund, which is provided by the Department for Transport earlier this year. And its purpose was to enable more people to walk and cycle where possible, while supporting safe social distancing in areas where people congregate, such as town centres and bus stops. The vehicle restriction was only enforced between the hours of 10 a.m. and 4 p.m, so the road could be used by all vehicles during peak rush hour traffic, while buses, taxis and cycles could continue to use the road throughout. Prior to implementing the scheme, key policyholders were consulted, along with the ward members, and businesses were also supportive of the proposal, given it was an experimental process. We also believe that the implementation of this trial would enable us to build on the excellent work we have undertaken elsewhere across Hartlepool and the momentum we have been working towards in achieving a more sustainable mode of transport by promoting active travel, which in turn supports the ambitions we have discussed and agreed in Council regarding climate change. It must be remembered that this was purely a temporary measure in response to the COVID-19 situation and in line with the funding allocation received from the Department for Transport. And this was the first trial of its type in Hartlepool, so we were keen to observe if a sustained change in travel habits could be realised. Furthermore, it was always our intention to review the scheme at its midpoint, and we have done that by carrying out an additional business consultation. And as I mentioned earlier at the start, the scheme has since been removed following discussions with those businesses. And with regard to the addendum proposed by Councillor Cartwright, I'd be quite happy to support that addendum to the motion. Chair, Mayor, I present my report to the Council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tennant. Councillor Mike Young.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think there was a number of us who had concerns about the York Road closure, not least myself, who forgot to adhere to it on a number of occasions, so apologies for that. But I think the overarching issue for me was the amount of traffic that was then pushed onto ancillary and smaller roads, not least St Paul's Road and Osborne Road. And I think it highlights another point that with with Councillor Cartwright's Councillor Cartwright's permission, I'd like to look to add another addendum that we review the flow of traffic on St Paul's Road and Osborne Road, particularly at that chicane, and I will call it a chicane because it's often used as one, and look for maybe a single flow of traffic in one direction. And I'm no expert, so I can't say which way is the best way to go, but certainly a review of that to see if there's a better way or a better solution in terms of one-way traffic on that particular stretch of two roads. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Marjorie James.
Thank you, Chair. I would second the addendum that's just been moved by Councillor Young. As somebody that lives in that vicinity, I was absolutely amazed that we came out of lockdown to see COVID-19 being utilised on boards on York Road. It's the first thing I knew about it. And I would have thought that if the council were making these kind of decisions, members would be consulted over it. Because to be honest, for those of us that have been around a little bit longer than some, this has been on the cards for quite a long time. It's been pushed here and there and everywhere over a number of years, and it's never had public or political consent within the council. So I was absolutely amazed to see the boards were up and that COVID-19 were being used as an excuse to bring it in. So I'm quite happy that it's now back open. But I do think that what Mike Young said is an important part to this, that Osborne Road, St Paul's Road S-shape is absolutely lethal. And I'm absolutely amazed that we've never had either a major pile-up with vehicles or a pedestrian being seriously injured at that point, because it's a blind bend in both directions virtually, and both from a pedestrian walking and from people driving, it's dangerous to both, and it desperately needs to be dealt with.
Okay, thank you, Councillor James. Our Managing Director, Denise, would you like to come in?
Yeah, just sorry, and I may be there might have been future debate, but I just wanted to check the wording of the amendment to the motion, Councillor Cartwright, and I've written something down, and I wonder if you can sort of confirm this. To ensure all ward councillors are consulted when considering the introduction of restricting vehicular movement on any of Hartlepool roads.
Yeah, sorry, I did add on to that, Denise, that full consultation with elected members and the people of Hartlepool, as we have done previously with the swimming baths, because ultimately it's the people of Hartlepool who we represent, and likewise I think it's only fair that they have the say. So thanks for clarifying that, Denise.
Chair.
James.
Yeah, I don't think that what Denise has actually said there actually fully covers the issue that was actually raised by Councillor Cartwright, because speaking to ward councillors in the instance of the town centre, it affects the whole town, and therefore I think what Councillor Cartwright was suggesting is that council as a whole should be consulted. You know, if you were talking about something at the top end of Rift House Estate, well, fine. You know, it doesn't really bother anybody other than those that represent Rift House Estate. But if you're talking about the town centre traffic movement and pedestrian flows, then that affects everyone, and therefore the whole council should be consulted.
Thank you, Councillor James. Our MD, Denise, would you like to come in there, please?
Sorry, just to confirm, I thought I did say all ward members, so I apologise if that was lost in the transitions, but I did pick that up, Councillor Cartwright and Councillor James.
Okay, so we'll go to, have we got obviously Councillor Cartwright, you move in the addendum, is that right? Have we got a seconder?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor.
Yeah. Okay, a seconder?
I'll second.
I did second that already, Chair.
Councillor James, thank you very much. Okay, thank you. So we'll go on to a recorded vote then.
Can I just...
Madam. Oh, Mike,
sorry, can I just ask whether that includes my addendum as well, or are we just ignoring that one?
You've got my permission, Councillor Young. Thank you very much. I think I fully support what you're saying there.
Chair. Chair, we need to vote on both addendums separately, and then you would end up with a substantive motion.
Okay. Let's take a bit of legal advice here. 2 seconds. Sorry about that, members. I was just wanting a bit of clarification. So we'll go on to, is there any dissent on Councillor Cartwright's addendum? Is everybody happy with that? Don't see any hands up. Yeah, I'll take that as okay. And we'll move on to Councillor Young's.
Clarify.
Yeah, Councillor Young, can we just have yours clarified again, please?
Yeah, no problem. I just want us to check whether it's possible to do a one-way system on the St Paul's Road and Osborne Road route. So I don't know which direction it would have to be, but if we can review it and see if there's a direction of flow that would work.
We'll just have a word with...
Okay. We can send that to neighbourhood services, can't we? Madam Chair, I think we can refer that to neighbourhood services to pick that up rather than it be a motion that needs to be voted on, if everyone's happy with that.
That's fine, if everybody's happy.
And it's a direct action, Councillor Young.
Brilliant. Okay, that will be referred to Neighbourhood Services Committee then. So we don't need a vote on that. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. So we move on to item 13, which is I'll hand over to the Managing Director, Denise McGuckin, for her business report. Denise.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The report covers quite a few things today, so I apologise, it's quite long. This is about the appointment of the representative to Tees Valley Clinical Commissioning Group and the Primary Care Commissioning Committee. Members, sorry, I've got some feedback on my, is everybody on mute? I've just got some feedback, that's all. At the meeting of full council in October, elected members were advised that the authority had been requested to appoint an elected member representative to the Primary Care Commissioning Committee of the new Tees Valley CCG. At that time, we received 2 nominations, Councillor Thomas and Councillor Hall, and I sought to clarify whether there was any conflict of interest regarding Councillor Thomas, who was an employee of Healthwatch. I've had this confirmed that there is no conflict of interest, as this would be a non-voting position and is acceptable. Therefore, I haven't received any other nominations, but that can be considered now, and if not, we would have to go to the vote regarding Councillor Thomas and Councillor Hall. But I seek Council's instructions.
Okay. Do we go to a vote now?
Yeah. Councillor Young.
Councillor Young.
I was just going to say, yes, we go to the vote.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Young. We'll go to a vote then. We'll do Councillor Hall.
I'll just ask them to take the name.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What I'll do, rather than for and against for each person, if members can just say they're in support of Thomas or Hall, please. Councillor Christopher Akers-Belcher.
Councillor Thomas.
Stephen Akers-Belcher. Councillor Stephen Akers-Belcher.
Can you come back to him?
Yeah, of course I can. Councillor Brewer.
Councillor Hall.
Councillor Brown.
Thomas.
Councillor Buchan.
Councillor Hall.
Councillor Cartwright.
Councillor Hall.
Councillor Cassidy.
Councillor Hall.
Councillor Fleming.
Councillor Hall.
Councillor Hall.
Councillor Hall.
Councillor Hamilton.
Councillor Thomas.
Councillor Harrison.
Councillor Thomas.
Councillor Howson.
Councillor Thomas.
Councillor Hunter.
Councillor Thomas.
Councillor James.
Councillor Hall.
Councillor King.
Abstain.
Councillor Lauderdale.
Hall.
Councillor Lindridge.
Thomas.
Councillor Little.
Hall.
Councillor Loynes.
Paul.
Councillor Marshall.
Thomas.
Councillor Moore.
Hall.
Councillor Prince.
Thomas.
Councillor Tony Richardson.
Councillor Hall.
And Councillor Carl Richardson.
Councillor Thomas.
Councillor Smith.
Hall.
Councillor Stokel.
Hall.
Councillor Tennant.
Councillor Hall.
Councillor Thomas.
Councillor Thomas.
Councillor Ward.
Councillor Hall.
Councillor Young.
Councillor Hall.
And back to Councillor Stephen Akers-Belcher.
Councillor Thomas.
Thank you. Just add those up and come back. Give me 1 second. So the 17 votes there for Councillor Hall. So Councillor Hall will be representing the council on the CCG. In I'll continue my report. I've received no special urgency decisions, so none were taken during the period set out from August to October 2020. Members are asked to note the report. And also now go on to the COVID update. When writing this report, we were still in a national lockdown, and we'd received the COVID-19 winter plan, which talked about the tier structure. Members are fully adverse in that now, so I won't go through that in any detail. What I would like to point out is we are still seeing high cases. We came from a very high level. At one point, we were at 600 cases per 100,000 of our population. And we're now, our last 7-day total, which we received today, we had 249 cases in the last week, which is equivalent to 233 per 100,000. Unfortunately, whilst we've seen a great drop in cases, which is wonderful, and it's down to all the behaviour of everyone in Hartlepool, and we thank everybody for all the hard work that they're doing. It's starting to plateau a little bit, and unfortunately that hasn't been sufficient to enable Hartlepool, and along with the rest of the Tees Valley and the North East, to move into Tier 2. So we are remain in Tier 3, and members will also be aware that this will be reviewed on a fortnightly basis. So it's really important we continue to see and continue to do the hands, face and space, and do everything we can to reduce the number of cases. We are unfortunately about to enter Christmas, and we will see a relaxation of restrictions, and bearing in mind the feeling on from the council floor tonight, I think people are really concerned about that. And I would also remind everyone that there's been a total of, I think it was on the news tonight, over 66,000 deaths in total related to this. So I think it does actually bring it home to us all. And whilst we can have 3 households mixing in our Christmas bubble, that doesn't mean to say that you should. I'm desperate to hug and love my family and friends like everybody else is, but it's really important that we do our little bit. So when you start having your Christmas dinners, just remember and reflect on what's happened over the last year. And I think it will soon be the 27th of December, we'll be back in Tier 3, and we will unfortunately, I believe, see an increase in cases again, but that is a personal view. We are, as a council, looking and working with government now on mass testing. So we're hoping to introduce that in January, and I will keep members updated on that. There is obviously the good news on the horizon that we have a vaccine now, and I'm really pleased to let the members know we have residents in Hartlepool who have been vaccinated this week. So if people are being in touch, and obviously I know it's a personal choice, but I would encourage everyone to actually get vaccinated who is offered this. I think Councillor James has got a hand up.
Oh, yeah. Councillor James, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask, really. I mean, I accept everything that's just been said, and I think that as a town we are in a desperate situation with COVID, and it is very likely that there will be an increase following Christmas, and that doesn't have to be just accepted. We should be trying to not do that wherever possible. But the figures that have been given are always given on either a regional or a national basis as far as deaths are concerned. And I think it would be helpful to residents in Hartlepool to ensure that they do know the latest figures. I think we all now know somebody or a family that has lost someone as a result of COVID. So it would be helpful, I think, if we actually started to publish the local Hartlepool death rate and those that are in hospital and those that have sort of been tested and found positive, whether they're in hospital or not. I think we really need to home in on our own figures.
Thank you, Marjorie. Can I come back, Chair?
Yeah, yes.
You're absolutely right. And just for clarification, in the last week, there has been 6 deaths, and we have 200 people who are in the hospital at North Tees and Hartlepool, and 7 of which are in critical care. I'll make sure that the dashboard is updated, Marjorie, to take on board that information, which is on our website. If there are no more questions, I'll move over to the community governance review. Members will recall that full council approved the terms of reference under which 2 community governance reviews should be undertaken following valid petitions from the residents of Wynyard to be removed from Melwick Parish Council and become a standalone Wynyard Parish Council for Hartlepool, and residents of Southends proposed that they be removed from the Greetham Parish Council, but without an alternative parish council being considered. In accordance with the terms of reference, an initial 6 week period has concluded and the consultations responses are attached, and further draft proposals are included in appendices A and B. These draft proposals will be subject to further consultation during December and January, and a further report will come back to Council for final decision on the 25th of February. There is a slight typing error in Appendix A in relation to the Greetham item, and the date of the next election should have read 2023 rather than 2022. Sorry about that. Are there any questions? No. Okay, and just to note, I've received notification from councillors Jim Lindridge and Paddy Brown that they have resigned from the Labour group and will therefore become independent councillors.
Councillor Harrison.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's just on the last point there. We will obviously, as a group, be looking at the ramifications of that as far as committees are concerned in the new year. But we as a group would like to wish councillors Lindridge and Brown good success for the future, and thank you for everything that you've done while you were in the Labour group. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Okay. There's no public questions have been received at agenda item 14. So are there any questions under agenda item 15 on questions to the chairs about recent decisions of council committees and forums without notice under council procedure 10.1? I don't see any hands up. No. Okay, thank you. The next one, there are no questions under agenda items 15B, 15C, and at item 15D, the minutes of the meetings held by the Cleveland Fire Authority or the Cleveland Police and Crime Panel have been circulated for information. Has everybody had a chance to read them? Yep. Okay. Okay. Before I conclude the meeting, I'd like to wish everybody a happy Christmas as best as you can. Have a happy Christmas and a very prosperous and happy, healthy New Year. And thank you all for attending. If you'd like to stop back for a moment while we stop the live streaming. And thank you very much. That concludes the meeting.